Welcome everyone to the Game Disc Podcast, where every week we discuss the past, present, and future of the video game industry, including the top 100 games of all time. I'm your host, Simon Esty, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Noah Esty.
And today we're discussing all the big news from Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft this week. Then, for our top 100 games of all time discussion, we're diving into Sonic Adventure 2. Is it one of the best games ever made? We will find out. But first, Noah, how are you doing today?
I'm alright. So, apparently I found out I'm obese, actually, which is kind of interesting. What about you, Simon?
By, like, Japanese standards?
No,
or, like,
I
global?
By global, I bought a scale, and I stepped on it, and it said, like, your BMI is 26.5%, and which means you're obese. You are obese. And I was like, wait, really? That's it? And so I looked up, and apparently that's facts. So, yeah, that's something that hopefully I can start working out more. I haven't really been able to go to the gym just because I've been sick so much, and I've been spending.
But to be clear, you were very religious about working out. You did it a ton. You were really into it. Even if you haven't done it at all, unless something drastic has happened since I saw you in December, in no way are you obese. Like, you are not. I feel like you did something wrong. I don't know if you. I don't know. That's wild. Okay.
I mean, it's possible I have zero muscles now. So even if I may not be as round as some other people are, maybe I just have zero muscles.
But there's a difference between, like, overweight and obese.
I mean, I'm just bones and fat by this point, baby.
Maybe that's what it is.
But what about you, Simon? How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. It was my birthday yesterday, so my fiance was able to kind of get the weekend off, which doesn't happen. So we went to dinner yesterday and today. Tomorrow we're gonna do, like, kind of a throwback day where we're gonna just watch Saturday morning cartoons and eat, like, Pop-Tarts and Eggos and play some GameCube and Nintendo 64. And yeah, just kind of we went to Goodwill yesterday and we picked up a DVD that was a Blockbuster exclusive, and we're gonna watch that on our PlayStation 2. So yeah,
so we're what cartoons are you planning on watching? Batman the Animated Series?
Yeah, I'm thinking we're each gonna pick a couple. So she'll probably pick, like, a couple of from Disney Channel. I'll probably pick, like, Pokemon, and yeah, Batman the Animated Series isn't a bad one. Maybe Spider-Man. I didn't watch Batman a whole lot when I was a kid. I more watched the Fox ones, but I definitely acknowledge that Batman's a better show now. But yeah, other than that, pretty good. Got my GameCube back from the console doctor too, and I'm a little disappointed because I have an incredibly beat up copy of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. And I was hoping that when the GameCube got fixed, the laser would be strong enough to read it. And I got like one quick moment of optimism because the GameCube read that it was Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, but it wouldn't actually read it once I clicked it. So I'll need to get a new copy of that.
And that's not just a new thing. That's been going on for years. I remember we had a Wii, and you would pop it in because you'd be like, I want to play Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. And you'd pop it in, and it wouldn't read it. So it's not a new copy at all.
Yeah, well, I did. I got it resurfaced, and I thought, and I hadn't tried it in anything since I got it resurfaced. And yeah, like I said, I was hoping. But let's just get right into the news, because all three publishers had a decent-sized week. Let's just start with Microsoft, because I think that is kind of the one that most people are thinking about after last week, where everybody thought Microsoft was going to explode and they were done with Xbox. they had a podcast that they released this week, and it was a little light on news, but it basically was just kind of saying, "Oh, we're still committed to Xbox, and we're bringing Diablo 4 to Game Pass, and we're also bringing 4 games to Switch and PlayStation." And they didn't say what the games were, but the rumors are they did say that 2 of the games are smaller games and 2 of them are live service. And kind of putting 2 and 2 together, the 2 smaller games are rumored to be Pentiment and Hi-Fi Rush, and the 2 live service are rumored to be Sea of Thieves and Grounded. Spencer also reiterated that Microsoft is committed to making Xbox consoles, and there is a handheld that is rumored to be part of their lineup due to a couple of tweets that he liked talking about handhelds. And the last kind of piece was that as part of their ongoing commitment, they are going to have a next gen Xbox at some point, and that it will be the most powerful thing in the world, basically, is what they were saying. So, yeah, what's your take on all this? I know people have been freaking out, people have been worried. This
Yeah,
this
it's
is kind of it didn't really change what the rumors were, right?
mm-mm. No, there was. We've been hearing for a while. So we've been hearing for a while where Whack was.
Mhm.
No, we've been hearing the big rumor that kind of started all of this was Hi-Fi Rush coming to Switch, and then Hi-Fi Rush coming to Switch and PS5, and now they've confirmed that some games will be coming to those consoles. So it hasn't so much changed; it's more of just been expanded upon. What I think the big thing though is they've saying they're not giving up on making consoles. I think that is also really big because on our podcast we've talked about maybe they will stop making consoles, maybe they won't, but they're going to try something different. We mentioned last week maybe they're going to kind of go for like one of those portable PC things that are starting to rise up and become popular. So, not much has changed, but I think that it is starting to narrow things down into the realm of possibility of what we're going to see. And yeah, I'm excited for Hi-Fi Rush on Switch or PS5 because I've been wanting to play that game for a while.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you said. I'm not terribly when so you and I kind of reported on this 2 weeks
Mhm,
ago before the internet blew up because we
mhm.
recorded on like a Sunday for some reason. And you and I
Well,
were
and the
both
terrorist attack that
yeah,
they
yeah.
blew up the internet. Yeah.
Yeah. And we were pretty like this kind of makes sense. And then everybody freaked
Mhm.
out. And we were like, "Oh, maybe we should have freaked out a little bit." But I think that yours and my kind of initial assessment was correct in that
Mhm,
Microsoft's got to do something to change, and their install base is so much smaller than PlayStation and Switch. If they can get a couple of extra sales, why not take it? Especially when they're basically committed to putting games on those platforms anyway with Call of Duty after buying Activision Blizzard. Not to mention Microsoft has put games on the Switch.
mhm,
You can play Cuphead and Ori, both the Ori games, and Minecraft all on Switch. So
mhm.
it's not even like it's that weird for them. I think this is just the next step. And maybe we will see Indiana Jones and Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6. And if we do, I mean, are they really losing that much?
Yeah.
I think the big fear, like we talked about, is Sony becoming kind of a monopoly. But if they can kind of do their own thing with handheld consoles or whatever the next version of Xbox is, even if it isn't a traditional box, I think they'll be okay. And
Yeah,
hopefully,
and
oh, were you gonna keep going?
yeah, I was just gonna say, like, yeah, Microsoft was open to exclusivity or being non-exclusive for a long time. I mean, they are definitely the one game company in an open relationship right now, based upon the fact that even back then, when they first bought Mojang, people were like, "Oh, does this mean the PS Vita version of Minecraft will be canceled?" Microsoft's like, "No, we still have plans on releasing it." And to give you an idea of how old that was, how long ago that was, it was for the PS Vita version.
Yeah,
And so they still are making all these games. So Microsoft is, correct me if I'm wrong, it is the best selling video game of all time. And
I
Microsoft
don't think
probably
that's
sees
true.
profit in that. I think it is. What game do you think has sold more than it? More than it?
I think Tetris.
I'm pretty. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought
Oh
Minecraft
no, you are right.
beat
You are
it.
right. It is Minecraft. Yeah, you're right. It
Yep.
is Minecraft. Then
Mm-hmm.
GTA 5, and then okay, you're right. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's because they were able to put it on everything. Um, oh
Mm-hmm.
man, you just had to keep talking. Now
No,
I
it's okay. I
don't
mean,
know.
it
No,
makes
now I
really
just don't know
sense.
my segue. But
Well,
I
I mean, I was
guess,
about to do your segue.
well, no, it's my segue. I need to do it because when you do the segue, then it just throws me off worse.
Okay, go ahead, do your segue then.
So they're gonna put Minecraft on all these consoles, but it may not be enough to keep selling well because the PlayStation 5 has missed its sales targets. Originally, the forecast was for 25 million units this year, and it has dropped down to 21 million units. On top of this, they said they're going to focus on profitability of the console over actual unit sales as the console is entering the latter phase of its life. And they also confirmed that they are not releasing any entries in their major IP for this fiscal year, and the fiscal year would end March 2025. So there's a lot to unpack here. I think this is all pretty surprising. The
Mm-hmm.
PlayStation 5 has been selling like hotcakes, but I think there are just so many people interested in a console. So I think it is going to drop pretty fast. I think all the people who want one have gotten one, and we're going to kind of see that slow down. As for the latter phase of its life cycle, that part's not, it feels surprising because it seems like this last year was the first year we started getting real kind of exclusives. But
Mm-hmm.
when you think about it, the console came out 4 years ago. Assuming it has, an 8 year lifespan, it would be going into the second half. And finally, the not releasing any entries in major IP, that makes sense to me because a lot of people have kind of been asking, well, Sony is the big question mark this year. We know Microsoft's got Avowed and Hellblade and now Indiana Jones. We know Nintendo is probably going to, well, we thought they were going to release a Switch this year. Maybe they're not anymore. But Sony was kind of the big question mark. And even during their last state of play, we saw a bunch of third party games that they were just kind of slapping their name on. And it's because they don't really have anything. And when you look at their lineup, where we've already gotten a lot of entries in some of their big franchises, it makes sense that there's going to be a lot of time. But what's kind of your take on it? What are you thinking? You think this makes sense?
I mean,
Why
I
did this
think
happen?
that I, yeah, I think it's one of those things that any not having a major release at least once a year, I think is kind of
That could hurt them.
concerning. Yeah, definitely. I think it is concerning. I feel like Sony does have those like moments where it's kind of like, hey, we don't really have a whole lot going. Usually it's like once they do a showcase and once all those games come out from the showcase, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, we're kind of just twiddling our thumbs for a bit. And yeah, Spider-Man 2 just came out, which it's good, it's a fun game, but yeah, now what's next? The only thing we really know for sure is Wolverine, but that's not supposed to be coming out. I'm sure Insomniac is just starting there. I don't even know if they're fully starting the development of Wolverine now. If Wolverine's like now their full-time project,
Oh,
but
I'm sure it is. It's supposed to come out next year. I'm sure that,
okay,
and due to
I
those kind of leaked screenshots, that seemed like it was decently far along. I'm sure that yeah, it's all hands on deck because
yeah,
The other project they're working on is supposedly Venom, which is going to
mm-hmm.
be a smaller title anyway. So
Yeah,
yeah, I would
and
assume that's in like full production.
but yeah. So going back to it, I'm sure that Sony, I could see this being done on purpose, on the sense that Sony is going to release their second PS5 model. So then they do that, and then they announce a bunch of games with it too to get people excited. And it's like, hey, you want to play this game in both performance and visual mode? What's it? It's performance, and what's the other one?
There's performance and like performance is
Yeah,
FPS.
right.
What are they? I always just play on performance. I turn it off of the other one.
Exactly, me too. That's why I forgot.
Like graphics mode. I think it's just like graphics mode.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where it's like you like this game, you want to play it on both performance and graphics mode, buy the new PS5.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. The PS5 Pro is also rumored to release this year. Maybe they did see, hey, we don't have any, we're going to have a lull just due to how long these games are taking to make. Maybe you're right. Maybe they said, let's launch the PS5 Pro now so we can kind of build some excitement when we just have a natural lull. And on top of that, if their sales are starting to kind of taper off, that's when you want to hit. They want to kind of ride that wave, and that's what Nintendo did with the OLED, and it worked pretty well for them. Which brings us to our next story, where Nintendo is gonna have also a bit of a lull because the Switch successor has been delayed to 2025. This is coming from a couple of different sources, including VGC and a Brazilian games journalist who I meant to write his name down and I didn't. But this is kind of a big surprise. A lot of people were expecting the Switch 2 to get announced next month due to Pioro, I think, and Nate the Hate, who both have a very good track record for Nintendo leaks. And a lot of people were expecting the end of this year. We've got kind of a dry Switch lineup, made worse by the fact that there was supposed to also supposedly be a direct this week, but it was delayed due to Microsoft's announcements or lack thereof. So it's been a kind of a weird week to be a Nintendo fan. Which, Noah, you famously hate Nintendo. I said let's talk about the Switch
I
2, and you
do.
said
I
no.
do.
You said no. I hate Nintendo. I think Mario, the best version of Mario, is the one voiced by Chris Pratt, and
I did not
Nintendo's.
say that. I said Chris Pratt's version of Mario was superior, but even then, I would still consider it awful.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so what do you kind of make of all this? I'm bummed. Like that's all. The Switch is showing its age. I think that this is going to be a bad year for the Switch, just because I think that they don't have a whole lot. So, but what about you?
I mean, to be fair, I haven't really played my Switch too much. I'm not a big Switch person. It's kind of it is what it is. If the Switch 2 is going to just be here's the thing with me and Nintendo. I feel like Nintendo's new products can be very exciting because they try to make them really unique. I mean, obviously the jump from the GameCube to the Wii was very different, and then there's the jump from the Wii to the Wii U, which was meh, and then the jump from Wii U to the Switch, which was really cool. And so, if the Switch 2 is just going to be a graphics upgrade, it's like, okay, that's cool, I guess. But if it's they do something crazy like, hey, we're not doing Switch 2, we are doing the Switch 2 screen, and it's both a successor to the Switch and the DS, I'd be like, okay, that's kind of interesting. So I'm not interested in the Switch 2 until they reveal it and we get a good idea for what it is.
Okay, I mean that's fair. I think
Mhm.
I'm a big Nintendo guy. I play my Switch more than my PlayStation. So for me, like I really just need it to be better. In fact, I am worried about them doing any weird stuff because I just don't need that in my life. I just want to be able to play. Yeah, I just want to be able to play all kinds of the games I want. I would love to see like the Yakuza games on a Switch, and yeah, I just want it to be more powerful. I want to see kind of what the next generation of handhelds could do, and the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally have showed where that market is, and I think that the Switch is trailing behind. But we'll see. I mean, I guess we'll wait. Originally, I was thinking about getting the Steam Deck OLED, but thinking the Switch 2 was going to launch this year, I was like, no, I don't need two handhelds in the same year. But if the Switch is not coming out this year, then I may have a Steam Deck in my future.
Mm-hmm.
But a game I won't be able to play on the Steam Deck because it's an Epic Game Store exclusive is Alan Wake 2, which has sold 1.3 million units, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is Remedy's fastest selling game, and so they seem pretty happy with it. What about you, Noah? You famously also hate Alan Wake almost as much as you hate Nintendo.
Yeah, in fact, I actually sent Remini an email when Alan Wake 2 was announced, I said, I am going to go to every single store I can and destroy every copy of Alan Wake 2. And fun fact, that's actually why the game is digital only, because they're like, well, we don't want that. So I am directly responsible for that. If you're angry at me, okay. But
Okay.
regardless, I think that it's one of those things, kind of going back to it. This is a game that it was not released physically, it was not released digitally, or yeah, it was not released physically or digitally. You had to just imagine playing the
Yeah.
game. And so it was not released physically. It was only a digital game, not on Steam, only Epic Game Store. And the fact that it's Remedy's fastest selling game really kind of goes to show that we don't know a whole lot about game sales, in all honesty. We've talked before about how we didn't think Final Fantasy 16 sold too well, and then Square Enix came out and was like, "Oh, this game actually beat our sales expectations, so we're going to make some DLC for it." And so I think that it's one of those things that's just kind of going forward. We really have no idea how well a game sells and also what the company expectations for these games are. And I'm glad that Alan Wake 2 is selling well. It was a game that they've been waiting 13 years to make. And I thought it was a game that maybe they were going to take a loss on, and they were just going to kind of accept, like, we're taking a loss on this game. We're making the Max Payne 1 and 2. We'll make some money then, and then we can make something else that we want after. And so the fact that it's met or exceeded their expectations, that's good. I'm really glad for them.
Yeah. I do think that people sometimes like weaponize sales. Like in the
Mm-hmm.
case of Final Fantasy 16, a lot of people they came out and they said it was how fast it was selling and they were super happy and it already had like exceeded 15 or something weird, and people were like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, it only sold 3 million copies." I feel like they didn't really look at that number. They just were mad that it wasn't like turn based, and so it
Mm-hmm.
didn't matter what it would sell. Even when Square Enix came out and said, "Yeah, we're pretty happy with it," even though it didn't meet our targets, it's like
Mm-hmm.
they said, like, "Look, it didn't even meet their targets," and it's like, yeah, but what Square Enix game has met its targets ever? Um, and
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not saying that that's the same case for Alan Wake. Alan Wake,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good that it's their fastest selling game. I think it's a game that will continue to sell. I think the biggest thing hurting it is that it is digital only. But
Mm-hmm.
to that point too, I believe developers make a little bit of extra money when games sell digital. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe 1.3 million copies digital is more money than 2 million physical. I don't know. But so to
Well,
your point, Noah, we don't know how sales numbers works. We don't know what these
yeah.
budgets were. Yeah, we don't know anything, but as long as the company's talking about it, then it's probably they're
Yeah.
probably happy with it.
And
So
like
that's all we can go
another thing too as well is Remedy didn't put the game on the Epic Game Store out of the kindness of their hearts. Epic had to have given them a solid deal along with publishing the game. There's also a very good chance that they gave them a lot of money extra for that exclusivity.
I don't think it was
Because
that. I don't think it was I don't think Epic said, "Hey, we'll pay you money to keep it on only the Epic Game Store." I think they probably said, "We'll publish your game, but it's only going on the Epic Game Store." But again, to
that
your point, Epic probably gave them a lot of money to do that.
to
So
and another thing too is that a lot of people don't mention this game was only $60. Most games are $70. This game was only $60, and Remedy said we are doing this so that way we're pretty much like we're doing digital exclusive, because if we wanted to factor in the costs of having it shipped and buying all the cases and
yeah,
discs,
it was to keep
that
costs
would
down. Yeah, it was a lower
exactly.
budget game.
And
They didn't really think it was. This is not a big multi-million seller, and that's why I
mm-mm.
think they think 1.3 is good.
Yeah, and I do wish that that was something that people talked about more, just because there's a big conversation about how games shouldn't go to $70, and then Remedy made a game and they were like, "Hey, we're going to keep it 60." And then the conversation was, "Well, they should have made a physical release." So I think it's kind of interesting how the fact that people don't really bring that up when talking about the game shows that maybe the $70 jump increase wasn't as big of a deal as we actually thought, and we just got used to it very quickly.
No, I think that that's definitely true. I think if you, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
when the price of everything else was going up, what's 10 extra
Yeah.
dollars? But
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even going to do a segue because this one's just sad. But
Yeah.
Suikoden creator Yoshitaka Murayama has died. His new studio, Rabbit and Bear Studio, announced the news. They didn't say exactly how he passed away. They just said it was on February 6th due to an ongoing illness. And for those of you who don't know, he, like I said, was the creator of Suikoden, but he also has an upcoming game that comes out on April 23rd that he worked on called Iodine Chronicles 100 Heroes, which was a Kickstarter game that is a spiritual successor to Suikoden. So it's a, you know, obviously it's a, he was fairly young. I was trying to find his age. I think I read somewhere he was like 55, so he wasn't that old. But this is, I mean, this is terrible. But I'm glad that, you know, he was able to create a work that a lot of people consider one of the best games of all time. I mean, he's definitely, you know, this a contributor to a industry and a medium that we all love, and I'm personally really looking forward to Iodine Chronicles. I hope that it's a fitting send off. I wish that he could see his kind of work released and how fans react to it, but I'm really looking forward to it, and I think the game looks pretty good, and I hope it, yeah, I hope it's a strong tribute to him.
Yeah, and it seems like from what I am looking at here, it seems like he was about 55 years old, like mid
Oh, okay,
50s. And
called it.
yeah, it's always a shame when something like this happens because we're now getting at to the point where a lot of people whom developed a lot of classic titles or had a really big role, they're now passing away. We've really talked about how recently there was the woman who was inducted who did a lot of iconic music for Capcom, and it's one of those things where it's like games now are there's so much history in it, and unfortunately for that reason a lot of the people who created those iconic titles they're now getting older, and it's nice that we're going to be able to play another work from this guy and they can now dedicate this to him. But yeah, it is sad, and it's one of those things that as we ourselves are getting older, we'll remember these classic titles and such and playing them and how they made us feel, and then saying like, "Oh, that person who's responsible for it, like, that's really disappointing." So,
But that's, I mean, this might sound awful, but it's almost bittersweet in a way, right? Because it's showing the history of the industry. Like, I'm
mm-hmm.
you and I are both pretty big comic guys.
Yeah,
That's, and it's the same thing, you know. I've read comics that by people who were written or drawn when I first started getting into comics, and those people I'm rereading them, and those people are no longer with us. But I think that
yeah.
again is, it's just building into that like tapestry of the industry, and it's all just part of its ongoing history. Which, um, yeah, again, it's just amazing people working on games, and I'm glad that
Yeah.
they're, like I said, I'm glad that his work got to inspire a lot of people, and hopefully Iodine Chronicles is a huge success, and it gets a sequel, and his legacy gets to live on.
Well,
That
at
being
least the
said,
good news
Noah.
is we never have to worry about Alan Moore dying. That man's gonna live forever.
Oh yeah, Alan Moore will live forever. He'll outlive all of us. All right, Noah,
He
get us
will.
into the feel good story.
All right, so today's feel good story was actually comes from an article written by Zoe Handler. Just wanted to give a shout out for finding this out. The Sega Dreamcast light gun game Death Crimson 2 has gotten a fan translation. Death Crimson 2 and 1 were both Japanese exclusive games, but Death Crimson 2 did have a little bit of a narrative, and for that reason, they made a fan translation for it, got everything in English. It's what's referred to as a kusoge, which essentially is shorthand for a direct translation of shit game. Kuso game, short for kuso game, or kusoge, short for kuso game, which means shit game. And not the greatest, but that's kind of where a lot of the charm comes from for those games, is how broken and bad they are. So it's not a big game. It was Japanese exclusive, so for a reason, but for the sake of video game preservation and also just for allowing everybody around the world, or at least in English speaking countries, they now can play this game and be like, yeah, this game really isn't that good.
Yeah, now we can all agree on something. Yeah,
Yeah.
Handley does like a column where she writes about this, and when
Yeah.
I used to visit Destructoid a lot, and I would always read them,
Mhm.
and they're always a good time. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm that's cool for people who want to check it out. It's just obscure, and that stuff's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that after so long it finally came out, which brings us
Mhm.
to our next story, Noah. Our
Yep.
next feel good story. Noah, they did it. Skull and Bones is here.
I am so glad you had that.
Did it play
my
correctly?
Yes, it did. Oh, it did. All right, it did. I was literally like, man, I really wish that we had some kind of cheering or something, and you did it. You brought
I,
it
I
out. So
I
what's
searched
this?
for an air horn right before we started the podcast because I wanted it, but
Yeah.
on my end it didn't play. So I was like, oh, did it really not play? So I'm glad that
No,
it did.
it worked all right. It worked all
Cool.
right, and
That's all I care
apparently Skull
about.
and Bones is also working because it has a 64 on Metacritic. Correct?
It has a 64 Metacritic, which is better than another game that came out last week, Suicide Squad, which has a 60. Yeah, I've heard the game is actually not bad. Like, it's just not what people wanted. But I've heard
Yeah.
it's like kind of fun. Like, it's fun for a bit, and it's like competently made. Like, it doesn't like fall apart. It's just like whatever. It's just like average, which I feel like is not. I expected worse. If you had asked me at the beginning of the year which
Yeah.
is going to be a better game, Skull or Bones or Suicide Squad, I would have said Suicide Squad.
Yeah. And so I was expecting it. So Madam Web has a 27 on Metacritic. I was expecting it to get something like that. Like it
Oh,
would just
Madam
have a
Web's gone
super
up.
low. Oh,
When
what
I
was it at before?
17.
Oh God, I really want to see that movie.
I don't.
So yeah, it's one of the things I was expecting this to be awful, and the fact that it is much better than I expected it to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So good job. Thanks Singapore for Skull and Bones.
Yeah.
You did it.
Now Ubisoft, I'm sure Ubisoft is the happiest about that more than anybody else in this world. They're like, okay, we finally got it done. We don't have to worry about this game at
they're
all.
probably just glad it's like off the books. Like every quarter, they're not like writing, and we spent this much on Skull and Bones. Like they're just
Exactly.
glad it's over. They probably don't even care how well it sells. They're just glad it's like
No,
at this point.
no.
At this point, they're probably just glad it's like not an ongoing expense.
Yeah.
Another game that came out that is a live service game that people actually like is Helldivers 2, which brings us to our next update for our game draft. Noah, you drafted Helldivers 2. It came out a week ago. It came out a week ago. And when we looked at it, it hadn't gone through Metacritic yet, but I checked it today and it does have a Metacritic score and it's at 83. So you are at an 80. So you're at a total of 173 with 2 games released, Tekken 8 and Helldivers 2. I'm at a score of 263 with 3 games released, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, Persona 3 Reload, and Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. And Noah, the reason I want to talk about the Switch 2 is because you've got Metroid Prime 4 as one of your draft games, and I've got a new 3D Mario. I don't know if they're coming out anymore.
I don't think so either.
And so we had to put in a rule when we made this that we could get one drop. Those might have to be our drops. So
yep. They definitely something that we might have to do, but
yeah, we'll see how it goes. So I believe the next game that comes out, Noah, is yours, and you drafted Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Other games you've got coming up: Black Myth Wukong, Avowed, Hollow Knight Silk Song, which that's got to come out this year. Metroid Prime 4 and Princess Peach Showtime. I've got after Final Fantasy, I think is my game, which is Dragon's Dogma 2, and then I've got Unicorn Overlord, Star Wars Outlaws, a new 3D Mario, and Metaphor ReFantasio, which might also not come out this year. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes. All right. That being said, you ready to get into our game discussion?
I think so.
Alrighty then. So last week, as the wheel decreed, we are going to talk about a Sega Dreamcast game, and Noah, you and I did not have a Sega Dreamcast, so we had to pick a game that came out for the Sega Dreamcast and was then ported to the GameCube, which we did have. And
Mm-hmm.
so we picked Sonic Adventure 2.
Yep.
So, as per usual, Noah, what do you like about this game? What do you not like about this game? Very quickly, very briefly, spoiler free. Who would you recommend it to? Go.
What do I like about it? I like the Sonic levels. What I don't like about it, or I like the Sonic levels in the Chow Garden. What I don't like about it, everything else. I would recommend it to Sonic fans.
Okay. I do like the Sonic levels. I actually don't mind the like Tails levels. They're kind of fun.
Mhm.
The Chow Garden is pretty cool too.
Mhm.
I guess I just oh, and the music is rad.
Yeah,
I
music is great.
don't I don't like I do like its jankiness too. I don't
Mm-hmm.
like I don't like its. I'd like. Yeah, I keep thinking I'm about to say like, oh, I don't really like how janky it is, but I kind of like how janky it is. I guess I don't
Yeah.
really like some of the Knuckles and Rogue levels. Rouge, those
Mm-hmm.
are kind of dumb. And I would recommend this to people who want just like a throwback game because it is just a
Mm-hmm.
really like I feel like it is just a time capsule. Like we just don't get games like that anymore that are not
Mm-hmm.
awful but not great. But
Mm-hmm.
um, so with that being said, we are going to go into full spoilers. So if you don't want to know anything about Sonic Adventure 2 or its remake or remaster, I guess, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, we'll see you next week. So full disclosure, this is probably the video game I have played more than any other. This was like my favorite game as a
Mm-hmm.
kid. I absolutely love this. I devoured this game. I could probably play Cityscape with my eyes closed.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think that this game, given the time it came out, is a stronger game than people give it credit for. Now, I'm not saying it's the best game ever made, but I think that it does a lot right. And I think
Hmm.
that that should be worth something.
Okay. Go on.
I think that's kind of so. So it came out for the Dreamcast, and we still hadn't completely figured out like 3D games. And
Mm-hmm.
the camera does mess with Sonic sometimes, but like there are games that came out after Sonic Adventure 2 that are way worse, like as far as like camera controls. On top of that, the Dreamcast did only have one control stick,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know. I feel like this game actually controls like decently. I think that this Sonic game, Sonic himself controls better than pretty much like any other Sonic game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Sonic levels are really good.
Yeah.
And
And
I
I
think the
feel
music
like
is rad.
and I feel like that's the thing is the Sonic and Shadow levels are so good, and I feel like that is both the best case of why the game is good and why the game has its flaws, because the Sonic and Shadow levels, they're just so fun. And like you said, these are the games that you probably play this more than any. What percentage would you say is Sonic and Shadow, and what percentage is Sonic or is Tails slash Eggman and Knuckles slash Rouge?
Probably like 90% to 10%. But I
Yeah.
also, but I, it, I'm kind of cheating because Tails has a level where you drive a race car and Rouge has a level where you drive a race car. And I played those
Mhm.
levels a lot too.
Yeah, the kart racing mode was also pretty fun.
Yeah, it was. Even the battle mode was
Mhm.
kind of fun in the GameCube, but we're talking about the Dreamcast
Yeah,
version, I guess. So,
yeah. So And that's, like I said, I think that it's one of those things that this is a problem that Sonic has had for a while, and I think that it's a problem Sonic has had ever since Adventure 1, where it's like they always need a gimmick, and they can't just let it be a good Sonic game. It's
They
like,
can't just be
okay,
cool.
exactly. It's like, okay, so yeah, like this works. Okay, but what do we need to add on to it? Oh, how about you play as Tails and Knuckles? Okay, yeah, I mean, it might be a little weird because they're not as fast as Sonic. Oh no, Tails is in a mech, and Knuckles, he's gonna find shards, which it's weird to think of a Knuckles mission where he's hunting instead of like beating things up, but
That is
regardless. And
true.
then, of course, Werewolf Sonic, which it's actually a lot of people's favorite Sonic game, Sonic Unleashed. I was unaware of that, but yeah,
Yeah, people
apparently
are
it's
kind of
a
coming around. I think because people who played it as a kid are grown up. I think that was like a lot of people's Sonic Adventure too.
exactly. And that's they're saying like the game, the werewolf levels aren't that bad, and Sonic controls very well during his levels. I remember that game's demo did not have a werewolf level, but it did have a Sonic level.
Well, yeah, because
And
they put their best foot forward.
exactly. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of the best. This is a very good example of Sonic. It's like you were got everything right, and then you just had to add on to it.
Then they
That's kind of
indicted him.
jumbled. Exactly. Yep. It just jumbled everything up.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. This is kind of like the quintessential Sonic game where it's like, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the Sonic parts are really good, and it's got kind of a lot of the things that Sonic is known for too. Like I
Mm-hmm.
said, like I've said before, I don't think people talk about the music nearly enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like pretty much every song in this game is good. Like City
Yeah.
Escape, like the White Jungle level, like the Green Forest or something. Even like the like final levels, those all the music is great, and
Mm-hmm.
people just don't ever really talk about it. I think because it is kind of like poppy and it's kind of trash, but in a good way. That's fun to listen
Mm-hmm.
to.
Mm-hmm.
But to your point, again, the other sections aren't that great.
Yeah.
Um, but like I don't know, like I think I will say Sonic Adventure came out for the Dreamcast, and then Sonic Generations, which came out like what 15 years later.
Mm-hmm.
That game has atrocious boss fights, and the boss
Mm-hmm.
fights in Sonic Adventure are actually Sonic Adventure 2 are not
Yeah.
bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're actually like pretty good. There's like one boss that's
Uh-huh.
kind of frustrating. Uh
Which one's that?
it's like the second to last one. It's
What was
it's
it?
it's that big lizard thing. So it's like the final boss, but
Oh,
you
the one when
fight.
you're Shadow?
Yeah, that's like
Okay, gotcha.
I played through the game, like I replayed it on the 360 version like a year ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it that was like the only boss that sucked.
What about the Knuckles one where you fight the ghost?
That one's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, he's that one's not like that one's not frustrating.
I
He's just kind of boring.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing because I remember as a kid I would do the shadow level, and it's like I thought it was hard, but I still thought it was fun. But I was the ghost, and I was like, oh, that was kind of a boring level.
Yeah, they're kind of different. The shadow level is a little janky. It's like
Hmm.
jankier, and so you can die
Hmm.
easier. And then it's kind of a slog. So if you die, then it's bad.
Hmm.
The Knuckles one is not. It's just kind of it's just boring. Like you can
Boring.
kind of
Yeah.
yeah. It's not hard. It's just boring.
Yeah.
But I generally I think that the game's bosses are pretty good, and I like I said I think that kind of like you said actually the Sonic and Shadow levels are really good. And something else that
Hmm.
this game I think does that's really cool that I can't think of another game that does this is
Hmm.
there's a good campaign and a bad campaign. Both are canon,
Hmm.
but the good guys win in theirs and the bad guys win in theirs. And they do kind
Wait,
of do this cool thing, right?
I thought that like the bad guy. I thought that the good guys win in both of them. I thought that it was like, or
Well, so
was it the bad?
the bad guys feed into like the secret one. So, but like Eggman technically wins, but then at the end, of like his ending as he wins, it shows that like the biohazard thing has like opened up. And so it's like he won, but he doesn't realize that he like hasn't yet, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that's
Oh, okay.
I think that's
Oh,
kind of
okay, yeah.
cool. Like yeah, it's like no other game has a good and a bad ending that are both somehow canon, but also that like yeah, I just think that that's like
Oh,
kind of
okay. So I'm refamiliarizing myself with the ending, and so the good ending, yeah, has the heroes like win, they beat Shadow, but then the evil ending, Eggman sneaks away and he like arms the cannon. So
yeah,
in the good
exactly.
ending, so yeah, so it's like in the good ending it shows the hero celebrating, in the bad ending it shows Eggman sneaking away, but both of them lead into the final campaign.
Yeah, but it's I think a good way to do it. Like where
Yeah.
it's like cuz I remember as a kid I was like it took me like a minute to put like oh, both of these are happening. I
Yeah.
was just like, oh, like Eggman actually won in this one. And then
Mhm.
depending on which one you actually played first, once you beat them both, then you get the third campaign, like the secret one or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you were to play the Eggman one first, you'd be like, oh man, I guess he actually won. Oh wait, maybe no, he didn't. Once you beat the good one, so it's. I think
Mhm.
it's a cool way to do it, and I wish more games did
Yeah.
kind of do that, like in
Yeah.
general. And I think that maybe this game is uniquely suited to that, do that. But I
Mhm.
think that that is actually like a even though the story itself is just kind of normal general Sonic stuff, I think that that kind of shows that they were kind of talented, maybe more
Mhm.
than people gave them credit for.
Yeah. The the only thing I can you could kind of argue Devil May Cry 5 did something kind of similar with it, but even then it was still very different. It
Well, not
was
only
just
that,
like
but that was just one campaign, right?
yeah,
Like
there's just one
you played
campaign.
through like you played as Nero, and then halfway through the
Yeah.
campaign, you played as Dante. This was you could pick either of
Although
these whenever you
although
wanted.
I believe in the PS5 version, there were Virgil levels as well, and you can actually instead of fighting Virgil while Dante, you can fight Dante while Virgil. But
Uh,
the finale is still the same. Nero fights Virgil and beats him.
yeah. So I mean, but that I mean that's a little different, but
Yeah.
in general, like I said, if you're comparing
Hmm.
it to the original, that one was just a linear campaign with two different protagonists. This was two campaigns
Yeah.
where you did get to see how things played out differently, which is like, or not even how
Yeah.
things played out differently, just a different side. That,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
I think it's cool.
also the game's prologue technically is the villain one because the villain one opens up with Eggman infiltrating a base and discovers Shadow, and then the hero one begins with the
Yeah, they're already looking for Sonic because they think it's Shadow,
yeah,
or they're yeah,
then I think it would have been kind of cool if it directed you towards the villain ending then, but I mean, who cares?
yeah. I mean, but even then, it's like, oh, why are people after Sonic? And then when you
Yeah.
play the Eggman or the bad guy one,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, that's why.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, this game did also introduce Shadow, which I know Shadow's kind of like edgy, but I don't know. I think he's kind of a cool character. He is like he's not anything super special, and maybe he's actually bad because he started this weird trend of like Blaze the Cat and Silver the Hedgehog. But I
Mhm.
think Shadow is the best one because
Yeah.
not only does his backstory like actually like kind of make sense, but it's also
Yeah.
just he's just an evil Sonic, which is kind of cool.
Well, going by the something that is actually pretty good timing of us doing this episode, they've announced Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Shadow's in it, which means that it seems like they're going to be taking a lot of inspiration from the plot of this game for
Oh yeah, did you see the
that
logo?
movie. Yeah. And
The logo's
something
the
I saw is
same.
people say, so do you think they're going to show a child getting shot in this movie?
Well, I guess I've read somewhere that they the person playing Maria
Hmm.
like announced that they were playing Maria by putting like a jacket over their face to make it look like a body bag.
Oh, God.
Which is kind of like, oh man, I don't know. I don't know. I've actually really liked the Sonic movies. Um
Hmm. I haven't
maybe
seen any of them.
Oh, really? The first one's okay. I really liked the second. It could be just because I mean, I truly do
Bias.
not. Yeah, I'm not like the biggest Sonic fan. I'm not like,
Hmm.
oh, I got to watch Sonic Prime on Netflix, and I've played every Sonic
Hmm.
game. But I definitely hold Sonic to a lower standard. I truly don't remember a moment in my life before Sonic. Like I just always had Sonic Adventure or Sonic 2 and a Genesis. Like I did. Like Frontiers, I
Yeah.
know a lot of people had issues with it. I actually really liked it. But I think the Sonic movies, I mean, Kim doesn't have any connection to Sonic, and she liked them both,
Well,
and she's like,
I
"Oh, watch
feel
the Knuckles
like
show."
I feel like also the movies are tying into when you were closest to Sonic. I mean,
Oh yeah, yeah,
Sonic 2, of course, is based off Sonic's 3 slash Sonic and Knuckles, which you played a lot of as a kid. This one's obviously based on Sonic Adventure 2, which you just said is probably the game you've played the most in your entire life. So I feel like that also helps as well.
yeah,
And another thing too is like it's say what you want, the films have Jim Carrey doing Jim Carrey, which is always going to be a plus no matter what. So,
yeah. Oh, and they've got.
unlike,
I mean, I like Ben Schwartz too. Ben Schwartz, I think, is actually a fantastic
yeah.
Sonic. I actually
And
think Idris Elba's Knuckles is probably the
it's
weakest
one of those
one.
things where it's like, whereas I liked the Mario movie, but I acknowledge it wasn't the greatest of movies, just purely based on its own merit. Whereas anything where it's just Jim Carrey doing Jim Carrey, it's going to be good. Like that's always
Yeah,
going to be a plus.
yeah. I think the Sonic 2, I think, is probably like an overall better film than Mario, but
Yeah.
I could see
But
people disagree.
enough about these
Yeah.
movies. We're talking about Sonic Adventure 2. And something I've been wanting to bring up, but haven't really had a good opportunity to, is I like the Eggman and Tails levels, but there is one major issue, and that is for 90% of the levels you're going to be hearing.
Yeah.
And that
I
is
guarantee.
because for.
Sorry to interrupt you. I
Yep.
guarantee our software is going to cut out that noise you just made.
But so for those of you who didn't hear or didn't play these games, when you
Think of a dog
are playing
whistle.
as yeah, it's when you are playing as Tails and Eggman, you're in a mech and you need to hold down the button to target things, and then once you let go, you fire little missiles. But when you hold down the button, it emits this high pitched sound, and because that's your main attack,
You just
you're
always hold
going
it
to be
down.
exactly, and you're going to be hearing that sound for the entire thing. And so they're fun levels, but that is definitely a flaw.
Yeah, another flaw with the sound, which I don't know if this applied to the Dreamcast one. It was for sure on the GameCube one. And
Yep.
this is I acknowledge this is a flaw.
Hmm.
There's no excuse for it. I
Yeah.
love it though. I think that this
Hmm.
is the best one of the best things about this game is how awful the like sound mixing is, where they'll
Hmm.
just play like pieces of dialogue over each other, like and
Yeah.
like Shadow's like Shadow has a line like um you won't even get the chance. And before he can even finish, Sonic goes, I'll make you eat those words. So it's like, you won't even get the I'll make you eat those words. And then there's a couple just like that. And it's so dumb, but I actually like it for some reason. I think because I just kind of like this game's weird jank. And maybe it's because I've just played it when I was young and I thought that it was Sonic interrupting him, and it to me it just seemed like this like, oh man, they're just going at it. But it's when
Well,
now that I play it now and I realize no, somebody was just lazy and didn't bother to time the dialogue tracks correctly.
and it's probably like the Japanese version
Oh,
flows very
100%.
well.
Oh yeah,
And
100%.
and I feel like that's the thing too. Now, I'll go on and say I acknowledge it's a flaw. This is something that when we decide if it will be on the top 100 games, I will not use this as a benefit because
I
I
might.
know it's I no, you can't do that. You can't. We have to try to be objective. I removed Alan Wake specifically because I had to remove all personal biases. But so, with that being said, this is a flaw, and so when it comes to putting it on, I am not going to list this as something that is good about the game. It feels like both that and how the cutscenes are organized, it feels super fast paced, which, to
Yeah,
be fair, that's what you want in a Sonic game. My biggest critique for Frontiers was, even though the game wanted you to go fast, so much of it was just slowing down and making you go slower. Whereas in the rushed and jankiness of the cutscenes, it does make the game feel fast, which, like I said, I'm also acknowledging it's a flaw, but it does add to the charm of it. It's like something I've heard is every good game needs some jank because it keeps them humble. And
and this
that
game
is
has
this
it in
game.
spades. Yeah, it's got more than enough.
Yep.
The only other thing I think I want to talk about with this game is, which I'm glad you brought up when
Yeah.
you were talking about things you liked about it, is the Chow world.
Yeah.
It is. I don't. It
Yes.
was that in the original? Do you know? Was that in the Dreamcast one?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I feel like it
We can talk
should
about
have.
it
Let me.
anyway because if I mean, we'll just talk about it anyway. But
Yeah.
I I spent a lot of time in the Chow world too, and there
Mm-hmm.
was like truly, it was fairly robust given what you could do. There was a lot of mini games. There was a lot of, ways you could take care of it. You could get like the super strong chows where they'd go into hibernation, and I like how you could be a dickhead with Sonic to a chow to make it evil, and then you could be nice to it with Shadow to also make it evil. But it was also cool how like you actually got to run around as Tails and Eggman, which
Mm-hmm.
is
Yeah.
really like nothing. Like you couldn't really do anything, but it was still cool that they like took the time to model them like that. Like they could have just said, okay, you can play as, Sonic and Shadow when you go into the Chow world, but they didn't. They were like, oh no,
Yeah.
we'll take them outside their mech. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. It was fun to just fly around as Tails and sprint as Eggman because Eggman was actually super fucking fast.
Yeah, that was just running around in circles as Eggman in the Chow Garden little like lobby area was so great.
Yeah, he's just like sprinting, and it's like, why does this guy even use mechs? He's just as
Mhm.
fast as the
Well,
fastest creature in the
well,
world.
I think that this is something this they need to just shut up and say, okay, this is canon to Sonic. They need to make it canon. Eggman is just as fast as Sonic because in one of the Genesis games, I think it was two, it might have been three, at the end, Sonic is chasing Eggman, and the distance between them doesn't change, which implies, well, I guess this was Robotnik technically,
Oh, it's
but
the
that
same person.
implies
They
that
just call him different names.
I thought Robotnik was Eggman's dad.
No, maybe you're right.
It, in fact, I believe in this game, they're like, there's a message from Dr. Robotnik, and they're like, is that Dr. Robotnik? And so,
It may have been a retcon.
and so, but regardless, they should just make it canon that all of Sonic's nemesises are just as fast as him outside of his mech. But, so, going back
Yeah,
to it, and yeah, well, let's
it's
talk about
it's
the Chow world a bit.
it's the
Because
same person. Or yeah, Eggman and Robotnik are the same person.
let's talk about the Chow world a bit.
Okay.
And the Chow world, it was super cool. And remember the fact that Chow's, you went to the daycare to like give them new stats and such, and you bought items at the black market.
Yeah, this game's weird. But yeah, the way I learned about the black market was through the Chow. I didn't know that was a thing, and even after playing this game, I didn't realize the black market was bad. But I mean, it makes sense. You're buying like performance enhancers for Chows. I mean, it makes sense that you'd buy those on the black market, especially because you like, yeah, Chows are kind of weird. I feel like there's some
They
like
are.
dark like implications there.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, so something fun fact. This is y'all's fun fact for the day. So you know Omochao?
Yes.
Yeah. So you know how he's like a little toy robotic chow.
Yeah.
So in Japanese, toy is omocha.
Oh,
So it's omochao. It's a pun.
it's pretty cool.
Yep. And so yeah, that was really weird that you buy things at the black market. And yeah, I mean Sonic, it's an educational game.
Yeah, you can learn how to basically like cockfight and how to use performance enhancers and buy drugs and I don't know, I guess abuse things to get them great so they can
Yeah,
beat up other things. Yeah, it's
yeah.
it's a
And
lot.
I remember going back to the Chow thing as well. I remember a story that was really funny was as a kid you didn't realize that if you wanted a devil Chow, you needed to be nice with the evil people, and if you were want an angel Chow, you need to be nice with a good hero. So you made your hero Chow. You always played as Sonic at the Chow Garden because he's your favorite character. And so what you did was you would raise your hero Chow. You gave him all the hero fruit. You gave him a lot of loving care and such. And then you got your hero Chow. But when it came to your devil Chow, you did the same thing. There's like, I want this Chow to be my devil Chow. So you gave it the devil fruit, but this random Chow would keep walking up and eating part of the devil fruit, so you would pick him up and yeet him across the
Yeah.
stage. And because you were being abusing him as a
Yeah, as a
hero,
hero, he became a villain. Yeah, that was the
and
best way
you
to do
got
it.
yeah, and you got this thing that just had this really weird and creepy smile, and I think you ended up like deleting the Chow, like sending him away because you were like, I don't want this to be my devil Chow.
Yeah,
So
I sent
yeah,
him to
that
the
was
farm
great.
upstate because it freaked me
Yeah,
out. All right, I think I'm ready to call it. Are you?
I there's two other things that
Oh,
I
okay, yeah,
need to
go
talk
ahead. No, I
about.
mean we've
One,
got plenty of time.
yes, one we really didn't talk about anything with the Knuckles and Rouge stages, so I think we should
Oh,
probably
that's
talk
because
about
they.
that a
I mean,
bit.
because they're bad.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, the Knuckles and Rouge stages, they're scavenger hunts. You go ahead, you are in like an area and say what you want. I'll save this later. I don't want to jump around. So you go to an area and you have to find emeralds. And when you're close to one, it starts to beep. Closer you get, the more it beeps. And there are also computers, and the computers give you hints to the locations. And yeah, they're not the greatest. They're not terrible,
Towards the
but
end, they towards the end of the game they get pretty bad.
yes. And especially because unfortunately when you're dedicated to finding something, it's going to slow the game down.
Well, and the spaces
And
just get so big. Like there's a Knuckles one that's like in space, and it's like these just
mhm,
you have to like take rockets to go from platform to
yeah,
platform, and it's just so long. And then Rouge has one that's timed, and it's also huge, and so it's like, yeah, you could be on your way to get the last one, and if you had an extra 10 seconds, you would have gotten it, but no, and then you have to replay the whole level. So
yeah,
they're definitely the weakest parts of the game. Um,
yeah,
and kind of to that point too, while I like the Eggman and Tails ones, those levels are still pretty janky. And while I'm
mhm,
generally okay with the jank in this game, some of their jank is like
yeah,
falling through the ground or like your jet's not deploying correctly, so you just miss
yeah,
jumps, and that those can always be frustrating.
yeah. But there is one Knuckles level that's worth it though, and you know which one it is.
Is it Pumpkin Hill?
Yeah, it's Pumpkin
Pumpkin Hill has
Hill.
cool music, but even Pumpkin Hill, like the level itself is only okay.
Yeah, but
I
that
feel like that's the
track though is
last
great.
the
That
this
what's that?
but that's what I was saying. The music in this game is like
Yeah,
legitimately really good.
and I think that is something that
I mean, this gave us Live
goes
and
to
Learn.
show. Yeah, and that goes to show the how this is the quintessential Sonic game, because that was the thing. Even when Sonic was at its most hated, everybody was like, "Yeah, but the music's still pretty good, though."
Yeah, which is
And
ironic because I think Frontiers is like a pretty good true to, like return to form, and with few
mhm,
exceptions, the music is actually like pretty mid.
yeah, there's some great songs in Frontier, but
There's like
others
two
are
great
like,
songs. It's like Undefeatable and Feel the Flame or Feed the
yeah.
Flame or something.
And something I do also want to talk about because we didn't is the like upgrades and like the little items or ability things
Oh
and like
yeah, I
the
totally forgot about
mystic
that. Those things
ruins.
are actually
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, and so
Thanks for
that
reminding
was
me.
the thing. No, of course, like it. What they were they were like little upgrades that gave you new abilities or they enhanced it. The Some of them were like, oh, this is a new ability that allows you to break certain boxes so you can get into areas that you can't. One of them was with Knuckles, it allowed you to breathe underwater longer, which you actually needed for one of the
Yeah.
final levels.
Well, that's what
But which
was. Oh, sorry. You can
no,
keep
go
going.
ahead. You can
No,
go
I was just
ahead.
gonna say what was cool about them is like sometimes they would, yeah, like you'd get it on a Knuckles level, get the ability to punch through metal crates, and you would
Mhm.
need that to beat that level. And there was a couple like Sonic would get the light dash so he could run across
Mhm.
rings, but then there
Yes.
were also some that you would if you went back to a level like to get I don't remember which one it was, but there was some upgrade with Sonic that you needed like the bouncy jump
Yeah.
and the flame ring to break these crates. And that's where a
Mhm.
power up was. So you were also incentivized to kind of replay the levels because you were able to explore new areas, which might let you find new upgrades and things. And like you said, yeah, I when I first played this as a kid, that upgrade with Knuckles, you had to do it to get through this like final level, and I could
Mhm.
not figure out like how to beat this level. I just kept dying because I was like, Knuckles just can't hold
Yeah.
his breath, and it's because I just went through the whole game without finding that
Yeah.
breath upgrade.
And another thing that was cool was the items had visual, like they would change the character model as
Yeah,
well. Now this was for battle only, so
I don't
but
think
we'll
so
just
though.
talk about it real quick. But yeah, like Knuckles, he had like a breathing thing, so he had like a little necklace. His When he got the upgrade that allowed him to punch through things, his claws got like metal on them. So yeah, and so yeah, that was pretty much it. It's that, and was grinding a
No, grinding
feature
was
or no?
no
Okay.
grinding. He
Which
could just always do.
do you do you know the backstory behind the grinding in this game?
I do not.
Okay, so you know how the 2000s were all about extreme sports?
Oh yeah, I did know this. Yeah,
Yeah, okay. So, yeah. So something that to try to get on that was these shoes called soap shoes. And what they were was they were normal like sneakers, but they actually had like a thing of plastic or like metal in the middle of it. So what you could do is if there's just a rail, you could jump on the rail, and if your positioning was right, you would just slide down the rail. Of course, you had to balance yourself and very dangerous, but that's what it was. And so they made a deal with soap in this game to advertise the shoes. And so when Sonic and Shadow are grinding, they are actually wearing
yeah.
the soap
That's why
shoes.
there's soap like
And
literally everywhere in that game.
yeah, and so on like the cityscape level, there's like a Knights movie poster, a Chow in Space movie poster, and soap advertisements.
Yeah, that's kind of wild. All right,
Yep.
I'm ready to call it.
Yeah, I think I'm ready to call it as well.
Yeah, I think it's going on the list.
Yeah. Um, what are you thinking?
Um, like 48.
I was thinking maybe 90s because like
Oh wait, were you serious about
there's
it going on the list?
no.
I mean, I'll put it on the
I was
list.
no, it's I was you put Doom on the list and really didn't want to. So I was like if he really wants it on the list, I'll let him go on.
No,
But I was
I
throwing you
was
a bone because you weren't too excited about Doom but put it on the list. So I was like, if he really wants to put it on the list,
no,
I will. But
I will always hold a special place in my heart for Sonic Adventure 2. I'm not gonna use that bullet. I'm saving the Doom bullet for something else. But I thought that I when I was like top 50, I was kidding, and I thought you were gonna say like, oh yeah, let's put it at like 10, and I was like, okay, he's fucking with me. But when you're like, well, I think 90s, I was like, oh shit, does he think I'm serious? Like,
yeah,
I don't need it on the list.
well, to be fair, you did mention some criticisms for the games, but this was mostly talking about the positives.
Well, because it is like I think so, and I think that's because I didn't want to just be shitting on it the whole time. But
Yeah.
it is like some of the jank is bad, and I like it about it. But it is like objectively bad at how
Mhm.
frustrating it can get. I played it again, like I said, I played it for the first time in years, like a year ago, and there were
Mhm.
some just levels where you're just falling through the ground. And
Yeah.
again, I can deal with those things because I played this as a kid, so I'm able to look past it. But objectively, like you and Alan Wake, and I
Mhm.
know there's really like no such thing as an objective review, but there are some
Mhm.
things that are bad. And if we've only got 100 spots, Sonic
Mhm.
Adventure, I would actually say Frontiers is probably a better game than Adventure 2. And
Interesting.
because Adventure doesn't have the lows that it does, that like if Adventure 2 is just Sonic and Shadow levels, I would probably put up a fight to have it on. But it's
Okay.
not. It is also Eggman and Tails levels, which are just okay,
Mhm.
and Rouge and Knuckles levels, which I think are generally kind of bad. So it's like,
Yeah.
so you're left with just a mid game, and there is just, we're talking about the top 100 games of all time. There is no room on there for a mid game.
Okay, that's fair. And my things is kind of like, if you were gonna put up a fight for 40, I'd be like, well, I mean, Sonic Adventure came out as well, so a lot of like the movement and such was they already laid the foundation in the previous game.
No, I'm
Which, of course, Sonic Adventure does have its own flaws as well.
yeah. Looking at,
Uh,
sorry to interrupt. I'm just looking at
yeah,
looking at Metroid Fusion and Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart not
yeah.
getting on the top 100 games of all time. Yeah, Sonic. No, sorry, Sonic Adventure 2.
Although something that we do need to keep in mind, Simon,
Huh.
this. So we're not talking about Adventure 2 Battle, we're talking about Adventure, because this is a Dreamcast one, right?
Yeah. Well, we're talking
So
about Adventure 2.
yeah, we're talking sorry, Adventure 2. In the multiplayer mode in Adventure 1, instead of Dark Chow, they had Big the Cat. Does that affect your judgment in the game at all?
Um,
Here's what I
a little
found.
bit.
Yeah.
But again, no, because I think that sometimes when we talk about these games, like we do talk about like additional, I guess, releases. Like if we
Yeah.
ever talk about Persona 4, we'll probably talk about Golden 2.
Yeah.
And if you're going to go and make an enhanced version of your game and make it worse, I think you lose points for that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So, all right.
All right.
Sorry, Sonic Adventure. Maybe next week something will get on the list because yeah, we haven't had a game on the list in a while. Doom was our last game.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, we implemented the wheel for a reason and for more variety, and unfortunately, more games than not do not belong on the list, as crazy as it sounds.
Yeah, which speaking of, I'm spinning it right now.
Okay.
The fuck every week.
Yes. You need to do 5 rolls before you do it, because that is, or we need to just do a different thing, because you need to do 5
Noah,
rolls.
I shuffled it. I shuffled it before I clicked it. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe it's because I am shuffling it.
Or we just need a new
Okay.
program,
Okay.
because
Cool.
literally,
No, I'm fine with this. This is cool.
what is it? What is it?
Super Nintendo, Genesis, PC, and arcade. This could
Okay, and what are
this
we
could
getting?
get bad. If
I
we
know what
get
I'm hoping
arcade,
for.
can we
I
talk
know what I'm
about
hoping.
any arcade? I hope we
As
get.
I
I
was
hope we
thinking
get
from that
SNES.
era,
I
I'm
hope we
hoping for
get
arcade.
SNES.
Arcade.
I don't
Arcade.
what I if we get arcade, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat.
Oh, okay. Fuck. Yeah, it's
What are we
arcade.
getting?
We got arcade.
Yeah! All right. Well, we're gonna we're gonna be talking about a fighting game next week.
I guess so.
I don't know. I don't know what, but
Probably Street Fighter 2.
yeah, we're talking. Maybe that or Mortal Kombat. I don't know, but I can tell you one thing: there's a very, very good chance that whatever we talk about will be a fighting game.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. All right, Noah,
Yep.
before you get us out of here, what have you been playing?
I have been playing Spider-Man 2 mostly.
Spider-Man?
I have beaten. Yep, I've beaten Star Wars, and it was good. The ending, I'm a little
Oh,
okay,
really? I liked the ending.
but
Like, are you talking about like the
um,
ending, or are you talking about like kind of the final section?
I is it okay if we talk about spoilers or?
Yeah,
I'll
if
talk to you.
you're
You know what? No, it's still a new game. I will tell you about it
okay.
afterwards because I don't want anybody that is listening. I don't want to spoil the game for them because it is still a little new.
Well,
And
I
I
was just gonna
know,
say we're pretty much at the end of the episode
yeah,
now, so I was just gonna say
but
like if you I mean the game came out
I'll
almost
I'll
a year
mention
ago.
it.
If
I'll
you
mention it after the credits. Or yeah, I'll maybe mention it after the
maybe yeah,
credits or
tell you what,
something.
maybe
Yeah,
next week we'll try to do just like a little spoiler cast. We'll just do like a 10-minute talk at the
yeah,
end. I think that's a good idea. We'll do it next
maybe.
week though, because I'll have more time
Yeah,
next week.
yeah. And so there's that. I've been playing Tekken 8, and now I'm starting Spider-Man 2, which I'm enjoying. I like the first game a little more, but yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, the second one will grow on you, I think. I kind of felt the same way, but the more I played it, the more I kind of got into it. I just
Yeah,
like the way it tells its
but
story.
yeah,
It's cool.
but yeah, I do like. I feel like it's making me like Miles more than other things have.
I yes.
Every time I see something with Miles, I like him more and more. And this, like, they do such a good job of balancing the two characters that this is really making me be like, oh, because like there are
Yes, yeah.
there are
This is my
missions that
favorite
you can
version
do.
of Miles.
Yeah, and there are missions you can do as either of them, and I feel like I don't know if they did this, but I feel like the dialogue they have would work for both characters, and it both fits both characters.
I think I feel like they don't. I feel like it changes, but maybe I could be wrong. But
Yeah,
I agree with you. I think this is like the
yeah,
best version of Miles, even in like the comics. I think that it just shows why he is. Yeah, he's I mean just as
yeah.
good of a character as Peter. He is this generation's
Rem-
Peter, and I think there's a reason why.
yeah. Remember when he became Thor?
No, I don't want to talk about
That's my
that.
favorite character. That's my favorite version of Miles.
By Odin's fade. God. And
He
there's like
patrols Asgard his hood.
yeah, that's so
Oh, that
bad.
was so
That's an
bad.
official
That was
Marvel
awful.
comic that Marvel published.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Uh,
All right. But what about you? What have you been playing?
kind of the same stuff. I have mostly been playing Persona 3, and every time I play that game, I like it more and more. The
Mm-hmm.
character, I'm starting to get to the point where we're getting to the characters, and I'm really enjoying it. The music is just wormed its way into my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I still don't know if it'll take over 5, but I'm really liking it. The worst thing is it's on console. I wish it was on the Switch. This is a game I'm like strongly considering getting like a Steam Deck or ROG Ally for, because it's just this is a game that I think would play a lot better handheld. But it's fantastic. Other than that, I'm playing Final Fantasy VI, which is I haven't played it a whole lot, but I did play it a little bit last night. I'm getting kind of close, I think, to like the midpoint maybe. And I really like it. I just got to the point like I'm upgrading espers, like the game, kind of like the materia system in 7. You get like these espers, which are like these crystals that you can equip to unlock magic. And I just got those a little bit ago, so I'm kind of playing with those, and that really opened up the game, and I really like it. And I'm getting
Mm-hmm.
more into the plot. I still think it's maybe a little bit of rose tinted glasses. It's
Mm-hmm.
really good, and especially at the time. But I think games like 7 and 9 do a lot of what it did, but a little bit better. And then the last thing, which I haven't been playing, but I have been reading a lot. I've been reading Jason Schreier's books. I read Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, which is a cool book where every chapter just talks about like the development of a specific game, and that was a really cool read. I definitely recommend it, especially like the Star Wars 1313 chapter, the Stardew Valley chapter, and the Shovel Knight chapters were all really, really good.
Yeah.
And
I've been
then,
I've been reading Yertle the Turtle a lot lately.
oh,
It's
that's
yeah, it's a pretty good book. It's a really great analysis on human greed. So yeah, I haven't finished it yet, but yeah, I spend a couple hours reading it every night lately.
nice. Well, if it's an
Yeah.
analysis of human greed, it'd go pretty well with Jason Schreier's other book, which I started, which is Press Reset, which is about his like it's just like about kind of the turbulence and of the like working in the video game industry, and that's really eye opening too. So if you have any interest in the video game industry, I would definitely recommend checking both of those out.
Sounds good.
But before we get out of here, Noah, what are you gonna plug? What's your weekly plug?
Oh, geez, I forgot what my plug I was going to do is. So
It's not your little turtle.
I mean, we could, but instead, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna plug in foreshadowing, which
like the
like the literary technique.
okay.
Yeah, so it's pretty much whenever you kind of want
I think
to.
Everybody knows what foreshadowing is.
Well, this is what I'm plugging in. So, not a boo boo. Go stick your head in doo doo. So, what foreshadowing is like, if you want to kind of set a roadmap or like let the audience know something's going to happen in your story without spoiling it, you should do foreshadowing, which it can be like a little hint. Sometimes or like the other thing is if something major happens and then they go back and read and be like, oh, like there were seeds planted into it, so this isn't just out of nowhere. So yeah, if you're ever writing a story and want to do little like callbacks or something, you should think about putting some foreshadowing in.
Cool. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, I guess with that being said, I will get us out of here now. Did you write that down? Like you wrote down that you were gonna have foreshadowing as one of your plugs?
Yeah, I wrote a couple in case I can't think of any.
Okay. Thank you to Pecan Pie on Upbeat for our intro and outro songs. Thank you to Zach Robinson for our logo. Thank you to Gabrielle Este for our editing. If you liked this, please follow and or subscribe and consider leaving a rating and review so more people can find us. You can find other episodes of this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast. And I'm gonna put this one on YouTube. So after this episode, expect all upcoming episodes to be on YouTube as well. If you want to send us an email, you can do so at gamedisc.podcast@gmail.com, and we will read it on the air and answer any questions. You can send us questions, suggestions, or anything else you want. And we will see you all next week when we talk about an arcade game from the SNES Genesis era. Goodbye.
Bye. Her little Bailey there, over there.
It's a cat.
She's a good girl. Oh, I thought that I heard a dog bark.
I don't think so. Maybe.
No. Jeez, I just peed my pants.